Listen to me carefully. There are moments when heaven feels silent, when your prayers echo back to you unanswered, when your tears soak the ground and still nothing seems to change. In those moments, your heart asks questions, your lips are afraid to speak. You wonder if God has forgotten your name. You wonder if your pain was invisible. You wonder if your waiting was meaningless. And then, in the depth of your spirit, a voice begins to rise. Not a whisper of condemnation, not a sound of distance, but a weighty, holy truth that shakes the foundations of your despair. God said, I am sorry. I am sorry you had to endure what you did. I am sorry you were misunderstood. I am sorry you were wounded while doing your best to remain faithful. And this truth does not come to excuse weakness or justify surrender. It comes to reveal a God who sees, who knows, who counts every moment of your endurance and never allows a single tear to fall without purpose. You must understand this. When God says, I am sorry, it is not an admission of failure. God has never failed. It is a declaration of compassion so deep that it meets you at the lowest point of your humanity. It is God acknowledging the weight you carried while becoming who you were destined to be. You were not abandoned in the process. You were being shaped. You were not ignored. You were being prepared. God watched every sleepless night, every silent prayer, every time you chose faith when doubt screamed louder. And now God speaks into your spirit to tell you that nothing you went through was wasted, nothing you endured was overlooked, and nothing you survived was beyond divine awareness. There are seasons when God allows pressure not to break you, but to reveal what is already inside you. Gold does not complain in the fire, it emerges purified. Yet the fire is still hot, and the process is still painful. God is not indifferent to that pain. God does not stand far away with crossed arms watching you struggle. God stands close, counting every second of the refining process, making sure the fire does not consume you. And when God says, I am sorry, it is a reminder that God was there the entire time, restraining the flames, strengthening your spirit, and ensuring that what came out of the fire would be stronger than what went in. You see, many people misunderstand the silence of God. They think silence means absence. They think delay means denial. They think struggle means rejection. But God's silence is often the sound of deep work being done within you. While you were asking for relief, God was building endurance. While you were praying for answers, God was increasing your capacity. While you were asking for the door to open, God was expanding you so you could walk through it without being destroyed by what waited on the other side. God says, I am sorry you didn't understand what I was doing at the time, but trust me, you could not have skipped that season and still carried what I am about to place in your hands. There are wounds you carry that came not from enemies, but from expectations that were never met. You believed people would stay. You believed efforts would be recognized. You believed obedience would be rewarded immediately. And when those things didn't happen, your heart felt betrayed. God saw that. God saw the confusion in your spirit. God saw you trying to reconcile faith with disappointment. And now God speaks clearly. I am sorry you had to learn this lesson through pain, but I was teaching you not to anchor your identity in people, outcomes, or timing. I was teaching you to anchor your life in me alone. Hear this deeply. God is not apologizing because God lacked power to change your situation. God is expressing divine empathy for the human cost of transformation. Growth hurts. Becoming requires loss. Elevation demands separation. And while God orchestrates the process with eternal wisdom, God never ignores the emotional weight you carry along the way. Every time you felt like quitting but chose to keep going, God took notice. Every time you felt alone but still trusted, God was pleased. Every time you stood when it would have been easier to collapse, God recorded it as strength. Some of you were stretched beyond what you thought you could survive. You smiled while breaking inside. You encouraged others while your own heart was heavy. You showed up even when you were empty. God saw the contradiction between your outward strength and your inner exhaustion. And now God says, I am sorry you had to be strong for so long. I am sorry you had to carry burdens in silence. But know this, I was building a strength in you that no circumstance can steal, a depth in you that no storm can shake. You must stop interpreting hardship as punishment. God does not punish those God is preparing. God refines them. God trains them. God equips them. The pressure you felt was not to crush you, but to compress greatness into a form that could be released at the right time. Diamonds are not formed in comfort. They are formed under immense pressure. And yet, God never abandons the diamond in the darkness. God controls the process. God sets the timing. God decides when the pressure has done its work. There were prayers you prayed that seemed to go unanswered. Nights when you asked God to change things quickly, to remove the pain, to shift the situation, and God remained silent. That silence hurt. It felt personal. It felt like neglect. But God now says, I am sorry you felt unheard, but I was answering you in ways you could not yet recognize. I was strengthening your discernment. I was teaching you patience. I was aligning circumstances beyond your view. What felt like delay was divine coordination. God's apology is not weakness, it is intimacy. It is God drawing close enough to speak to your wounded places. It is God acknowledging that the path to purpose is not painless. It is God reminding you that your suffering did not disqualify you. It qualified you. You learned things in the valley that you could never learn on the mountain. You developed humility, compassion, wisdom, and resilience that cannot be taught in comfort. God allowed the valley because God trusted you with the lessons it would produce. There are people listening who believe they missed their moment. You think the years you struggled were years you lost. You think the delay set you back permanently. But God says, I am sorry you believe time was wasted, because nothing submitted to me is ever lost. I restore years, I redeem seasons, I accelerate purpose. What took long to build will move quickly when the time is right. God does not operate on your clock. God operates on alignment. And when alignment comes, momentum follows. You may still carry anger toward God for what you went through. You may feel guilty for feeling that way. But God is not intimidated by your honesty. God invites it. God says, bring me your questions, bring me your disappointment, bring me your frustration, because faith that never wrestles is shallow. Faith that survives questions is deep. And God would rather you wrestle honestly than pretend everything is fine. When God says, I am sorry, it is an invitation to release what you have been holding inside and trust again with a healed heart. Understand this, God does not owe explanations, yet God offers reassurance. God does not need to justify decisions, yet God chooses to comfort. That is love, that is care, that is a God who values relationship over distance. When God speaks words of compassion, it is not because God lost control, it is because God values your heart. You are not a tool, you are not an object. You are a creation known intimately by the one who formed you. Some of your greatest pain came from obedience. You did what you believed was right, and it cost you relationships, comfort, and stability. You followed conviction, and it led you into uncertainty. God says, I am sorry obedience was costly, but it was necessary. I was protecting you from paths that looked easier but would have destroyed your future. I was guiding you through difficulty because the destination requires strength you did not yet possess. There is a holy compensation coming. Not because God needs to make up for anything, but because God honors endurance. What you endured quietly is about to be acknowledged openly. What you survived privately is about to produce fruit publicly. God does not rush these moments because premature exposure can ruin what has not matured. But when the time comes, the release will be undeniable. You must shift how you see your past. Stop calling it failure. Stop calling it loss. Stop calling it delay. Call it training. Call it preparation. Call it refinement. Because the version of you that stands today is stronger, wiser, and more grounded than the one who started the journey. God did not remove the struggle because the struggle was removing what could not go with you into the next season. God's apology carries a promise that your pain has an expiration date, that your waiting has a purpose, that your endurance will be rewarded with clarity, peace, and direction. You are not stuck. You are not forgotten. You are not behind. You are being aligned. And as you listen, something is stirring inside you again. Hope you thought was dead is breathing. Strength you thought was gone is rising. Faith you thought was shattered is being rebuilt. Not as fragile optimism, but as unshakable conviction. God is not done with you. God never stopped working. God never turned away. When God says, I am sorry, it is not the end of the story. It is the turning point where sorrow gives way to understanding, where confusion gives way to trust, where pain gives way to purpose. You are stepping into a season where what once hurt, you will begin to serve you. Where what once broke you will begin to bless others through you. Where your testimony will carry weight because it was forged in truth, endurance, and unwavering faith in God. Right now, something is being restored in your spirit. Not everything around you has changed yet, but something within you has shifted. And that shift is the beginning of movement. God is near. God is aware. God is intentional. And God is still writing your story line by line, moment by moment, with a wisdom that sees far beyond what you can imagine, guiding you forward with a hand that has never let go and a heart that has always understood the cost of your journey and the glory that is still unfolding before you as you rise, strengthened by what you survived and anchored deeply in God. Moving forward, not as someone who was broken by the past, but as someone who was shaped by it, walking steadily into what has been prepared with courage growing, vision sharpening, and faith deepening as each step unfolds into the next moment of becoming. There's a sacred moment that comes after survival, a moment when you realize you are still standing, not by accident, not by luck, but by the sustaining power of God. You did not carry yourself through those storms. You were carried, even when you stumbled, even when your faith felt thin, even when your words failed you. God remained constant. God was steady when you were shaking. God was faithful when you were confused. God was present when you felt alone. And now God is not only reminding you of survival, but awakening you to significance. Survival was never the final goal. Transformation was. God is now teaching you to interpret your story correctly. You once looked at your past and saw only pain, but God sees proof. Proof that pressure did not destroy you. Proof that adversity did not silence you. Proof that endurance became a language your spirit learned fluently. God allowed you to walk through what you did because God knew what kind of strength would be required for where you are going next. The future you are approaching cannot be carried by the version of you that avoided hardship. It requires depth, discernment, and unwavering trust in God. There is a maturity that only comes when prayers are delayed and answers arrive in unexpected forms. God was not cruel in withholding what you asked for. God was kind in withholding what would have limited you. You asked for relief, but God gave resilience. You asked for clarity, but God gave character. You asked for speed, but God gave precision. And now looking back, you begin to see that what felt like divine silence was actually divine strategy unfolding beyond your understanding. God does not comfort you merely to soothe you. God comforts you to strengthen you. Comfort is not permission to retreat. It is fuel to advance. When God says, I am sorry, it is not an invitation to remain wounded. It is a call to rise healed. God does not intend for you to live as a monument to pain, but as a testimony of restoration. The compassion of God is not meant to keep you fragile. It is meant to rebuild you whole. You are entering a season where discernment matters more than emotion. In your past, you reacted to what you felt. Now God is teaching you to respond to what is true. Feelings shift. Circumstances fluctuate. But God remains constant. And your foundation is God. You are no longer moved by every wave of uncertainty. You stand steady, not because life is easy, but because your trust is rooted deeply. God is also restoring your vision. Pain narrowed your focus. Survival mode limited your perspective. You learned how to endure, but now God is teaching you how to expect again. Expectation is risky when you have been disappointed before. Hope feels dangerous when it has been broken. But God is inviting you to believe again, not blindly, but boldly. This time, your hope is not based on outcomes. It is anchored in the character of God. There are doors ahead that will require courage, not comfort. And God is preparing you to walk through them without hesitation. The lessons you learned in obscurity will guide you in visibility. The humility you developed in waiting will protect you in promotion. The dependence you cultivated in weakness will sustain you in strength. God never promotes what cannot be sustained. That is why preparation took time. God is also teaching you the power of surrender, not the surrender of defeat, but the surrender of trust. You no longer need to control outcomes to feel secure. You no longer need to understand every step to move forward. You have learned that God sees what you cannot see and knows what you cannot know. That understanding brings peace that does not depend on explanation. Your past no longer has authority over your future. What happened to you does not define what will happen through you. God redeems narratives. God rewrites endings. God specializes in turning what was meant to silence you into a voice that carries truth and authority. You are not disqualified by what went through. You are qualified by what you learned. God is sharpening your awareness now. You are becoming sensitive to timing, attentive to alignment, and cautious with compromise. You have learned the cost of ignoring inner conviction. You have learned the danger of settling for less than what God intended. These lessons were expensive, but they were invaluable. God does not waste costly lessons. There is also a quiet confidence emerging within you. Not arrogance, not pride, but certainty. Certainty that God is with you. Certainty that God is guiding you. Certainty that no season you walk through is without purpose. This confidence does not shout, it stands. It does not rush, it waits with assurance. It does not panic, it trusts deeply. God is inviting you into deeper alignment now. Alignment with values that cannot be shaken. Alignment with truth that does not change. Alignment with a purpose that extends beyond personal comfort. This alignment may require letting go again of habits, of mindsets, of relationships that no longer serve what God is building. Letting go is not loss. When God is involved, it is transition. Do not underestimate what God is doing beneath the surface. Roots grow in darkness before fruit appears in light. The work God is doing within you is deeper than what can be immediately seen. And when the time comes for manifestation, it will be evident that this was not sudden. it was prepared. You are also learning the sacred balance between patience and action. Waiting does not mean inactivity. Trust does not mean passivity. God is teaching you when to move and when to remain still. This discernment will protect you from premature decisions and delayed obedience. Timing is everything, and God is the keeper of time. God's apology carries restoration, but restoration does not always mean returning to what was. Sometimes restoration means being introduced to what is better. You may never go back to the version of life you lost, but you will move forward into a version that is stronger, clearer, and more aligned with who you have become. God does not restore you to the past. God restores you for the future. There will be moments ahead when you recognize the purpose of your pain in the way you now respond to others. You will speak with empathy instead of judgment. You will lead with wisdom instead of impulse. You will encourage with depth instead of cliches. God is turning your wounds into wells of understanding that others will draw from. You are no longer merely recovering. You are being commissioned. Commissioned to live with intention. Commissioned to walk with clarity. Commissioned to trust without fear. The weight you carried has strengthened you for responsibility you once prayed for, but were not yet ready to hold. God is reminding you that your story is not finished. The chapters ahead carry meaning that reframes everything behind you. What once felt like apology now becomes affirmation. What once felt like delay now becomes direction. What once felt like loss now becomes legacy. As you move forward, carry this truth with you. God is not distant. God is not indifferent. God is intimately involved in every step you take. The same God who acknowledged your pain is the God who will reveal your purpose. The same God who saw your tears is the God who will steady your hands. And as you continue walking, trusting and becoming, you will discover that the voice that once said, "I am sorry," is now saying, "I am with you." And that assurance will shape every step you take into the unfolding future prepared for you in the wisdom, timing, and unwavering presence of God. There is a sacred awakening happening within you, a stirring that can no longer be ignored. It is the unmistakable recognition that everything you have endured, the disappointments, the betrayals, the moments of despair, were not random. They were deliberate, calculated by a God whose wisdom is infinite, a God whose knowledge of your life spans beyond what your eyes can see or your mind can comprehend. God is orchestrating every detail, aligning every circumstance, and opening doors you did not even know existed. And the apology you once heard in silence, God saying, "I am sorry you had to bear this burden," is the prelude to revelation. That apology is the calm before the storm of breakthrough. It is the quiet acknowledgement that your pain mattered, that it was seen, and that it is being transformed into power, into clarity, into destiny. Do not mistake hardship as rejection. Do not measure delay as denial. Every step, every challenge, every tear that fell in darkness was meticulously woven into the fabric of your preparation. God is not an observer of life who occasionally intervenes. God is the sovereign architect of every path, every shadow, every moment of light. What you called injustice, God calls refinement. What you called misfortune, God calls alignment. The times you felt forsaken were the very moments God was teaching you how to stand independent of circumstance, how to thrive in dependence on God alone. Fifth, there is a divine principle here that many miss. The greatest strength is not born in comfort, it is forged in trial. God allows adversity not to punish, but to reveal the depth of your faith, the resilience of your character, and the unwaveringness of your spirit. And when God says, "I am sorry you had to endure this," it is not a lament of incapacity. It is the voice of a God whose heart is moved by your courage, a God who honors endurance, a God who sees what no human eye could witness and values every act of obedience, even when it was unnoticed. You have been carrying scars, some visible, many invisible. You have learned to smile while broken, to encourage while exhausted, to remain faithful when the world seemed unfaithful. God saw it all. God recorded every sigh, every silent prayer, every act of integrity. And now God's apology is a bridge from pain to purpose, from survival to significance, from waiting to manifestation. What you once believed was wasted, God is redeeming. What you once thought was lost, God is restoring. And what you once felt was shame, God is transforming into authority. Understand this. God does not apologize out of weakness. God apologizes out of love. God apologizes because every soul is precious. Every moment of suffering is noticed, and every lesson learned in obedience is valuable. You may not have understood why the struggle was necessary, why the timing was delayed, why the outcome seemed hidden. But now, clarity begins to surface. You are beginning to see that every challenge was purposeful. Every closed door was a protection. Every heartbreak was a teacher. And every delay was divine preparation. There is also a divine call in this apology, a call to rise above resentment, to elevate beyond bitterness, to embrace forgiveness, not for the sake of others, but for the sake of your own spirit. When God says, I am sorry you had to experience this, it is also a call for you to release what has weighed you down, to let go of chains that were never meant to hold you permanently, and to step into a life that mirrors divine intention, not human limitation. God is also teaching you the sacred art of timing. You have grown impatient. You have asked for answers too quickly, demanded relief too soon, expected doors to open before you were fully prepared to walk through them. But God operates outside of human clocks. God moves with perfect synchronization, aligning circumstances and refining character simultaneously. And what seems like delay is not denial. It is God ensuring that when the moment arrives, you are fully equipped to handle it, fully prepared to sustain it, and fully ready to honor it. There is a beauty in the unseen work God is doing within you. While the world judges by results, God judges by growth. While the world measures by immediate outcomes, God measures by heart transformation, spiritual insight, and the resilience cultivated through trial. God is preparing you not for what you can see, but for what God can envision for you. A life of impact, of authority, and of testimony that carries eternal weight. God's apology also carries validation. You are not crazy for feeling hurt. You are not weak for questioning. You are not mistaken for being frustrated by delays. God acknowledges it all. God sees the battles you fought silently, the decisions you agonized over, the nights you wrestled with doubt. And in that acknowledgement, God restores dignity to your journey. Pain does not define you. Delay does not disqualify you. What defines you is faith, endurance, and the courage to continue trusting God even when it seemed impossible. You are being elevated to a place where your perspective is radically different. You will no longer view challenges as obstacles to your destiny, but as instruments of refinement, designed by God to shape your vision, discipline your spirit, and enlarge your capacity. Every hardship has trained you to navigate complexity with discernment. Every disappointment has built a foundation for wisdom that cannot be shaken by circumstance. Every delay has cultivated patience that will protect you from hasty decisions in seasons of blessing. Do not fear the unknown. Do not tremble at uncertainty. God's apology is paired with assurance. God says, I am with you. I see you. I am preparing you for greatness. The same hands that allowed you to walk through trials are the hands that will carry you into purpose. The same heart that empathized with your suffering is the heart that will guide you into destiny. And the same mind that orchestrated your challenges is the mind that will reveal your victories. You are entering a season where your testimony will serve as guidance for others. What you endured silently will become the light by which others navigate darkness. Your scars will transform into signposts of hope. Your persistence will become a lesson in faith. God's apology is not just a comfort, it is a commissioning. You are being sent forward with authority, equipped with the understanding that suffering is temporary, endurance is transformed. Active and divine purpose is eternal. There is also an awakening in your identity. You are no longer defined by what you lost, what you suffered, or what was denied to you. You are defined by who God has made you to be. The apology of God is a declaration that your journey matters, that your life matters, and that your future is intricately designed to reflect divine intention. Every tear was accounted for. Every trial was measured. Every moment of perseverance was recorded in the eternal ledger of God's plan. As you step forward, you must embrace a new courage. A courage that is not born from circumstance but from conviction. Courage that stands firm when the world doubts, when obstacles arise, and when the voice of fear whispers lies. God is embedding this courage in your spirit so that when the doors open, you will walk boldly, without hesitation, without apology, and without fear, because you are fully aware that God has prepared you for every step, every responsibility, and every opportunity that lies ahead. The apology of God is also an invitation into intimacy, not superficial closeness, but deep communion with the divine. You are being invited to speak honestly, to pray vulnerably, to trust fully, and to walk without pretense. God desires a relationship in which you are known completely, yet loved completely. And in this intimacy, your understanding of divine wisdom, timing, and love will grow beyond what you ever thought possible. God is teaching you that waiting is not passive. Waiting is active preparation. Waiting is a cultivation of strength, refinement, and character. Waiting is an opportunity to see the work of God unfold in hidden ways. And when the appointed moment arrives, everything you have endured, everything you have learned, and everything you have cultivated will converge in an unmistakable demonstration of God's faithfulness, timing, and infinite wisdom. There is a sacred security in knowing that God's apology is not the end. It is the beginning of restoration, the beginning of revelation, the beginning of authority, and the beginning of a season in which every step you take will be accompanied by guidance, protection, and empowerment from the one who has never failed you. The voice that said, "I am sorry you had to endure this," is the same voice that now says, "I am empowering you for what comes next, and I will never leave you nor forsake you." And as this understanding takes root in your heart, you begin to move differently. You pray differently. You act differently. You walk with assurance because you have seen the invisible hand of God at work. You listen with discernment because you have learned that timing matters. You hope without hesitation because you have witnessed that God's promises do not fail. And you lead with wisdom because your journey has cultivated understanding, patience, and spiritual clarity that no trial can undo. The story of your suffering is being transformed into a story of strength. The story of your waiting is being transformed into a story of alignment. The story of your despair is being transformed into a story of divine purpose. And through it all, God's apology reminds you that every moment mattered, every struggle had intention, and every tear has been redeemed into power. You are no longer merely existing. You are becoming the person God designed you to be, becoming the voice that will encourage the weary, becoming the strength that will uplift the fallen, becoming the living proof that God sees, God cares, and God restores. Your journey, once painful, now becomes purposeful. Your pain, once heavy, now becomes holy. Your story, once silent, now becomes a testimony of divine intimacy, wisdom, and authority. Everything you endured, every moment of doubt, every instance of fear, every season of waiting has prepared you for this. God's apology is more than words. It is the unveiling of destiny, the activation of purpose, and the affirmation that you are ready to walk in what has been prepared, guided by the wisdom, power, and unshakable presence of God alone. The path ahead is not empty of challenge, but it is full of promise. God does not guarantee the absence of difficulty, but God guarantees presence, guidance, and empowerment. And in every step, in every decision, in every moment of obedience, God's hand will remain upon you, turning what was once sorrow into strength, what was once silence into clarity, and what was once pain into eternal significance. The apology of God has unlocked within you a deeper faith, a stronger resilience, and an unwavering conviction that no trial, no delay, and no challenge can undo. God has not only acknowledged your suffering, but has transformed it into preparation, insight, and empowerment. And as you rise from the ashes of your past struggles, you will carry with you not only the lessons learned, but the authority to walk boldly into every season God has appointed, equipped, strengthened, and anointed by the presence of God. Listen carefully. There is a weighty truth you must embrace. God does not operate on human limitations, human reasoning, or human expectations. What you call impossibility, God called potential. What you call delay, God called preparation. What you call abandonment, God called meticulous care. Every moment you thought you were alone, every trial you faced without visible relief, every setback that made you question the pathway, God was not passive. God was orchestrating. God was realigning circumstances, teaching endurance, cultivating wisdom, and preparing your heart to receive what only God could provide in perfect timing. And now God speaks again, not with judgment, but with empathy. I'm sorry you had to endure the weight of this season without fully understanding my plan, but know that every moment was necessary to bring forth the fullness of your purpose. You must realize that pain is not always punitive. It is preparatory. The tears you shed, the nights you spent wrestling with uncertainty, the disappointments that cut deep, they were shaping a spiritual depth in you that cannot be taught in comfort. God is fashioning your spirit to recognize truth, to withstand adversity, and to act with discernment when the world tempts you with shortcuts. The challenges you endured were not meant to break you, but to break limitations. The limitations you did not even know you carried inside. And when God says, I am sorry, it is the voice of divine intimacy, acknowledging that transformation comes at a cost, yet assuring you that you were never alone in paying it. There is also a divine principle in all of this. No circumstance is wasted when God is involved. Nothing you have endured is random. The disappointments, the betrayals, the moments of fear, the nights of anxiety, they are threads in a tapestry only God can see in full. God does not discard your struggle. God redeems it. God does not overlook your pain. God integrates it into your growth. God does not ignore your longing for justice or clarity. God prepares it in the perfect season. And the apology is not a sign of weakness. It is the divine acknowledgement that God has always been with you, even when the path was rough and the journey exhausting. Some of you have felt the sting of injustice, the heartbreak of being misunderstood, and the burden of being unseen. You believed that effort alone would secure favor, that obedience alone would guarantee recognition. that faithfulness alone woe. ELD produced immediate results. And when the outcomes did not match your expectations, you questioned, you doubted, you feared that perhaps God was distant. Yet God saw every moment, every act of integrity, every tear shed in private, every silent prayer whispered in darkness. God recorded it all. And now God says, I am sorry you had to carry this burden alone, but I have seen you, and I am preparing you for glory that cannot be shaken by human understanding. There is a transformative power in knowing that God apologizes, not out of error, but out of relational intimacy. God does not apologize because of weakness. God apologizes because of empathy, because of care, because of a love so profound that it meets you where you are. God understands the human experience, the weight of despair, the difficulty of hope delayed, the exhaustion of trust stretched. And in that acknowledgement, God invites you to lay down resentment, to release bitterness, and to embrace the next phase with a spirit unburdened by past pain. You must learn to see waiting as active refinement, not passive stagnation. God is teaching you to cultivate patience while remaining vigilant. God is teaching you to act with wisdom while honoring timing. The difference between premature action and divine alignment is immense, and God's careful orchestration ensures that when the moment arrives, you are fully equipped to step into it with power, authority, and clarity. The lessons of waiting are as essential as the lessons of action. They shape your discernment, temper your spirit, and elevate your understanding of divine strategy. Understand this: adversity is not a sign of divine neglect. It is a sign of divine strategy. The very trials that felt unbearable were sculpting you into someone capable of handling the weight of destiny. What you experienced was not arbitrary, it was intentional. God's apology is not simply an expression of sympathy. It is a reminder that every tear mattered, every struggle was accounted for, and every moment of perseverance prepared you for a higher assignment. The sorrow you carried has been transformed into spiritual depth, insight, and authority, making you ready for influence, leadership, and divine impact. God's apology also reminds you that restoration does not always look like what you expected. Sometimes restoration is greater than what was lost. Sometimes restoration brings opportunity, wisdom, and alignment that surpass what you thought you needed. God does not simply return what was taken. God prepares you to receive what could only be given by the one who knows the end from the beginning. The delay, the heartbreak, the struggle, they were all part of a larger narrative in which your destiny is elevated far beyond what your immediate understanding could perceive. There is also a call to resilience embedded in God's words. God's apology is not an invitation to remain passive or dwell in regret. It is a summons to rise stronger, to walk with purpose, to embrace faith that is unwavering, even when the path is unclear. You are being taught to trust not in what you see, but in what God knows. You are being trained to move beyond fear, to rise above doubt, and to act in confidence that God's wisdom governs all outcomes. The hand that guided you through adversity is the same hand that will open doors, provide insight, and secure your steps as you enter the fullness of purpose prepared for you. Every challenge you face secretly built discernment, humility, and strength. Every moment of silence you endured honed patience. Every setback you survived instilled understanding. God's apology is a declaration that the process was necessary, that the pain was not in vain, and that your endurance has qualified you for greater responsibility. You were not broken, you were refined, you were not abandoned, you were prepared. And now, as clarity rises within your spirit, you can see the purpose behind the storms. and embrace the authority and wisdom that God has cultivated in you. There is also the awakening of hope. Hope is no longer blind optimism, but a resolute expectation anchored in God. It is a certainty that what God has promised will come to pass, that the wait is intentional, that the outcome is divine, and that no obstacle, no delay, and no struggle can thwart God's plan. Hope becomes your shield, your compass, and your guide. And with every step you take, you walk not in uncertainty, but in confident expectation of God's faithfulness, power, and presence. God's apology carries with it a sacred reconciliation, a reconciliation between what you experienced and what God intended. You no longer need to see every detail to trust every step. You no longer need to understand every circumstance to honor every decision. You no longer need immediate evidence to maintain unwavering faith. God's apology bridges the gap between human perception and divine purpose, giving you peace that surpasses understanding and a confidence rooted in divine sovereignty. You are being invited into a higher level of spiritual maturity. You are being called to discern not only the path, but the purpose of every trial. You are being trained to respond with wisdom, patience, and faith rather than frustration, doubt, and despair. God's apology reminds you that every moment of endurance has value. Every hardship has purpose, and every step taken in faith is building authority that will serve not just your life, but the lives of others. The journey ahead will not be devoid of challenges, but it will be filled with opportunity, revelation, and empowerment. God's apology is paired with preparation. Every struggle you endured has increased your capacity. Every setback has sharpened your judgment. Every moment of despair has expanded your insight. You are no longer defined by what you suffered, but by who you have become because of it. And as this realization takes root, your faith transforms from fragile hope to unshakable certainty. Your courage is no longer contingent upon circumstance, but anchored in God. Your vision is no longer limited by human understanding, but illuminated by divine wisdom. Your trust is no longer fragile, but fortified by experience, endurance, and intimacy with God. You are stepping into a season where influence, purpose, and destiny converge. The apology of God is not a concession, it is a covenant that what you endured will serve as a foundation, not a burden, a launch pad, not a limit. God's words are shaping your mind, strengthening your spirit, and preparing your heart to receive every promise, every blessing, and every opportunity that God has been orchestrating since the beginning of your journey. Pain has not defeated you. Waiting has not derailed you. Delay has not disqualified you. God's apology confirms that every step has been accounted for, every trial was intentional, and every tear will bear fruit in perfect timing. You are not merely moving forward, you are ascending. You are not merely surviving, you are emerging. You are not merely enduring, you are becoming the embodiment of purpose, resilience, and divine alignment, walking under the guidance, protection, and unwavering presence of God. There is a truth you are only beginning to grasp, a truth so powerful that it will transform the way you see yourself, your journey, and your destiny. God does not apologize lightly. God does not say, "I am sorry," as mere sentiment. God says it because God has observed every trial, every tear, every moment you wish the earth would swallow you whole. And God has seen the strength you summoned when it seemed impossible. God says, "I am sorry," to remind you that even in the darkest hours, even in the seasons that felt endless, God was present, guiding, protecting, and shaping you for a future that your imagination could never contain. Your past struggles were never in vain. Every delay, every setback, every disappointment was a tool in the hands of God to fashion a life of unshakable resilience and divine clarity. You must understand that God's apology is not a retreat from power. It is an expression of closeness, a signal that God is near enough to acknowledge the weight of your experience and to promise that the path forward is intentional, ordered, and under the full control of divine wisdom. You are never alone. Every moment you believed otherwise was an illusion of perception, not the reality of God's omnipresence. There is a sacred refinement, and that only occurs in the furnace of trial, a refinement that cannot be hurried, circumvented, or ignored. God allows seasons of hardship not to punish you, but to produce in you a depth of character that cannot emerge in comfort. Your endurance, your obedience, and your faithfulness in the unseen moments are the very elements God is now using to launch you into your appointed purpose. And God's apology carries the recognition that walking through these fires required more than strength. It required courage, patience, and a steadfast heart. God saw the nights you doubted, the moments you cried out, the times you questioned your ability to go on. And God says now, I am sorry you had to endure this weight alone, but you were never truly alone, for I carried you even when you could not perceive it. Many of you have carried burdens that were not yours to bear, sacrifices that went unnoticed, and responsibilities that weighed heavily on your spirit. You asked for relief, for understanding, for justice, and you were met with delay. But what you interpreted as delay, God intended as preparation. God's apology is paired with a revelation. The very things that challenge you have created a capacity in you that is unmatched, an insight that cannot be taught, and a resilience that cannot be replicated. You are stronger today because of what you endured. You are wiser because of what you survived. You are ready because God never allows preparation to be wasted. There is a powerful shift happening in your spirit when you hear God say, I am sorry. It is the shift from focusing on what was lost to embracing what is being built. It is the shift from seeing struggle as punishment or seeing struggle as purpose. It is the shift from despair to expectation. This is the divine call to awaken to the reality that God is not just observing your life, God is orchestrating it, aligning every element, timing every step, and ensuring that your path leads to destiny, not merely to survival. Do not be deceived by human timelines. The seasons you thought were long were never too long in the sight of God. What felt like years of waiting were necessary seasons for your spirit to mature, for your discernment to sharpen, for your faith to solidify. And now, as the apology resonates in your soul, you begin to see that the very moments that hurt you most are the very moments that prepared you for the influence, authority, and impact that lie ahead. Every tear, every wound, every trial was intentional, designed to produce something greater than comfort. It was designed to produce purpose. There is an awakening now that cannot be silenced. It is the realization that your story is being rewritten, not by circumstance, not by chance, but by God. What you once called failure, God calls foundation. What you once called disappointment, God calls direction. What you once called loss, God calls alignment. God's apology is a declaration that the pain was not meaningless, the waiting was not futile, and the struggle was not in vain. Everything was preparation for a life that will be unshakable, undeniable, and a testament to the power of divine design. You have been tested not to expose weakness, but to reveal strength. You have been challenged not to shame you, but to prove that endurance and faithfulness can carry you through every storm. You have been stretched not to break you, but to expand you, expand your vision, expand your courage, and expand your capacity to receive all that God has prepared. And now, the apology of God is paired with the promise of elevation. The weight you carried is giving way to wings. The trials you endured are producing triumph. The nights you thought were endless are paving the way for unbroken mornings of clarity, opportunity, and destiny. God is calling you into alignment with your true purpose. The lessons you learned in hardship are now tools for wisdom. The patience cultivated in waiting is now your foundation for leadership. The courage refined in adversity is now your power to step boldly into destiny. And every step forward is guided, protected, and empowered by God. No circumstance can thwart it. No delay can cancel it. No opposition can derail it. God's apology is the prelude to triumph, and your faith in God is the instrument through which that triumph will manifest. You are being prepared to navigate life with discernment, authority, and unwavering trust in God. You are being positioned to recognize opportunity, to seize purpose, and to act decisively when the moment is right. The patience and resilience forged in your past are not relics. They are weapons of spiritual authority, indicators of divine readiness, and hallmarks of a life that has been molded by God's intentional design. The apology you hear is God's reminder that preparation precedes promotion, endurance precedes influence, and faithfulness precedes fruitfulness. And now you must rise fully aware of your own capacity, yet dependent on God's guidance. The past will no longer define you. The setbacks will no longer limit you. The waiting will no longer discourage you. God's apology is a divine acknowledgement that what you endured has been transformative, that your strength has been tested, and that your spirit is ready to operate in ways that will impact generations. Every challenge was necessary, every tear was accounted for, every moment of perseverance is now your credential for authority. God's apology is not just a statement, it is a spiritual awakening. It is a divine invitation to live with clarity, to act with courage, to walk with unwavering faith, and to trust that every detail of your life is being orchestrated with precision, wisdom, and infinite care. You are no longer simply surviving. You are stepping into a season of purpose, power, and divine alignment that will reflect the patience, strength, and faithfulness you cultivated in silence. The path ahead will demand faith that is unshakable, courage that is unyielding, and discernment that is keen. But the same God who apologized for the weight of your past is the same God who will equip you for every challenge, guide you through every decision, and strengthen you for every step forward. You are no longer defined by what was difficult, but by what God has prepared you to accomplish. You are no longer bound by the trials you endured, but empowered by the wisdom, resilience, and spiritual depth those trials have produced. Every step you take now is a step of divine alignment. Every decision you make is guided by the hand of God. Every moment of obedience is infused with purpose. And every victory you experience is the fulfillment of preparation that began in the seasons of hardship, was refined in waiting, and was strengthened in endurance. The apology of God is the bridge from suffering to triumph, from confusion to clarity, from pain to purpose. The next chapter of your life will be defined not by the difficulties you endured, but by the faithfulness you maintained. It will be defined not by what was lost, but by what God has prepared. It will be defined not by human understanding, but by divine wisdom. And through it all, God's apology serves as a reminder that your journey was never random, your struggles were never overlooked, and your perseverance was never in vain. You are now positioned to walk boldly, act decisively, and trust unwaveringly in God's plan. Every step, every decision, and every moment of courage will reflect the work God has done in you, the lessons God has taught you, and the purpose God has placed before you. God's apology is a sacred reminder that the past was necessary, the present is purposeful, and the future is divinely orchestrated. Now, hear this with clarity and conviction. Everything you have endured, every tear, every delay, every moment of doubt has been accounted for by God. The apology you heard, "I am sorry you had to endure this," was never a sign of weakness, but a sign of intimacy, of divine empathy, and of God's unwavering presence in your life. It was God's way of assuring you that nothing was wasted, nothing overlooked, and nothing beyond purpose. You have been refined, strengthened, and prepared. You are no longer defined by the hardships you faced, but by the faith, resilience, and courage that those hardships have produced in you. As you step into the future, carry this truth like armor. God has seen you. God has strengthened you. God has aligned every circumstance for your growth, every challenge for your wisdom, and every trial for your triumph. Your waiting was preparation, your suffering was refinement, and your obedience was the foundation for your destiny. God's apology is paired with empowerment, equipping you to rise above limitation, to walk in divine alignment, and to embrace the purpose that has been meticulously designed for you. So rise with courage, step forward with unwavering faith, walk boldly into the season God has prepared, knowing that every moment behind you was necessary for the greatness ahead. You are no longer merely surviving. You are becoming the embodiment of divine purpose, strength, and authority. Let the words of God's apology settle deeply in your heart, not as a lament for the past, but as a declaration of hope, restoration, and destiny. God is with you. God has never abandoned you, and the life ahead is not only yours to live, it is the manifestation of everything God intended when shaping you, guiding you, and preparing you to fulfill your extraordinary purpose. Your past has trained you. Your present is empowering you. And your future will declare the faithfulness, wisdom, and glory of God. Stand tall, trust fully, move boldly, and let the life God has designed for you rise unstoppable, unshakable, and divinely aligned.